Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I'm Patrick Green, and I'm joined by.
Christian Motzka.
Perry Chicos.
And I'm Adam Ezekiel.
And we are thrilled to welcome back to Perfect Organism someone who needs no introduction whatsoever, Mr. Fede Alvarez, director of Alien Romulus. Thank you so much for making the time to come back on.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me.
So last time we saw you, it was a few weeks before the movie came out. We got together at San Diego Comic-Con, had that great time, got to see some footage, and now we're a few weeks after the film came out. It's almost a month. How has your life changed in the last since we saw you last time?
Not at all. I mean, if anything, things get very quiet very quickly. I mean, one is so busy making a movie and then promote it, and then it comes out, and then you're like, just at home, chilling, you know, trying to check your phone too much and not being like following the news too much of how, I try not to, at this point in my life, I try really not to read reviews or get too deep into that because usually you only remember the bad ones. You just remember the bad ones. Even even if a movie has mostly good ones, you always, in my memory, if I think back to Don't Breathe and movies like that were super well received. Like I only remember the bad headlights. The headlines. I always remember the deadline one that was like "Don't breathe," more like "Don't go." That's the only one I remember. And I'm sure there was a lot of really, really good headlines that praised it, but those never stay with you. So I learned my lesson. And I was like, this time I gotta stay away from it. I knew that people were liking it and it's working, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. So, but nothing really changed much. Is particularly the way I make movies, where I'm a writer director, so you kind of depend on what you're going to write next. So it's not about like, oh, maybe now, that movie has success and you think, what's going to bring you. There's not much to bring in that respect. I think there always is, I guess. There's more trust, and in the business, like when they're going to hire you, if you've done better movies or movies that have been more successful. But apart from that, not much change. So, but it's been really, it's been a thrill ride, and it's been great to see the movie come out and be received in the world the way it had. And so I'm happy that I'm done with it. but you know, just trying to enjoy the peace and quietness.
That's really great to hear, Fede. And I think we can definitely just jump into one of your what we would think most successful pieces of Alien Romulus, which is Andy's character.
Mhm.
And so this sort of comes from, if you've listened to any of our other shows, Xander House, who's usually off in the wings, he wanted to write this to you and just let you know that he identified really strongly with the character of Andy, just in part because he lives with some disabilities that he feels Andy beautifully illuminates. And so Xander wanted to tell you, just like with people with disabilities, synthetics have to roll with the punches when it comes to discrimination. Another aspect that he loves is the dynamic between Rain and Andy. It mirrors the dynamic that he similarly has with his older sister, Victoria. She's very protective of him and helped him a lot with social cues growing up. So Xander had the biggest smile throughout the film, not only feeling represented in one of his favorite series, but also having his sister and their dynamic presented in such an organic way. So with all of that, can you enlighten us, speak to Andy's character and how he may have represented neurodivergent people in society? Like, was that a choice you made or a by?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, and it was beautiful to hear that. And I actually, I did listen to, I always listen to your podcast, and I listened to the last episodes, and I heard that, and thought it was amazing. And it made me realize something that I hadn't even noticed, which is something that happens when you write from an honest place. Usually, a lot of things that you put in a movie, you don't even know where they come from. You just try to put what is coming from somewhere else. Rick Rubin is music producer. I love when he talks about the creative act of writing, being music, or being a book, or being a script. Like He says the writer only all he does is just the he says like the gods, the movie gods, the whatever music gods will send you the stories, and you're like an antenna, just channel it, put it on the page. When you're really receptive, it comes from somewhere, you put it on the page. That's just a process of, and and a romantic way to see the creative process. But what it really means sometimes is that it comes from places that you don't know, comes from within. And when I was hearing him talking about that, it just suddenly hit me. And I remember this when he was talking about the relationship. And I grew up, my young brother, he's 7 years younger than I am. When I went to high school, when I was already in high school, and he was in school, but when we were in the same building in Uruguay, he grew up like with a disability. He couldn't hear. He was like almost deaf, and he had to learn to speak again. So he was already when he was like 4 or 5, he could barely speak. He would just say some words. He was really bad with his language, and he had a hearing aid. And I remember, at home, I was like one of the things you kind of, yeah, whatever. My young brother, I don't know. But as soon as we went to school and we have to be in the same social environment, I remember like when I saw people being mean to him and like mock him, and he fired up all this violence I didn't know I have inside against them. And I got so mad, and I was so protective of him. And it was such a vulnerable place to be, to see through him how terrible it was for him, things that would never told us at home. So I think there's definitely a lot of that in that relationship. The idea of feeling like you got to be responsible for your brother, but at the same time, I would say, in full honesty, there's a bit of, particularly when you're in high school in the first years, a bit of an embarrassment of like, because is that's your brother? The one that talks funny, and so the mix between the responsibility, but also at the same time the dark desire to get away, to break free from that's definitely in that story, right? It's like anybody that grows up with someone that has some sort of disability, that can be like he says to her at the beginning, I know it's just been a burden to you. It is a complex, know how complex that relationship and that situation is. So that's something that we really lean in on that relationship. At first Rain starts in a place of selfishness, of trying to take rip it like a band-aid and just move away. And she has enough reasons to leave him behind. But then obviously the whole story is about doing the right thing, right? Which is not leaving him behind.
Yeah. Right. Continuing on from that a little bit, there are these very subtle hints in the movie about the biases against androids. Yuvaga 3 has a no android policy. The entry to the station that they go through says synthetics only, and yet you have to crawl through it. It's almost like an architectural bias.
Yeah.
And yet the character presented with, you have Rook and you have the one that cost Bjorn his mother. They're clearly in positions of power where Andy has no power.
Mhm.
So you have a real interesting and very, very subtle balance there. Can you talk about why you wanted to do that? Why you wanted to show so many different aspects of it?
I think it's interesting, like particularly when you look at the history of synthetics and movies, they're all the way they've been represented, right? Blade Runner, that's a whole, for me, it's what starts it really, and obviously it goes from these are the bad guys to realize they're basically slaves, and they're victims of this society in a way, and they're rebelling. And that was a big idea at the time, right? It's so big that most people couldn't embrace it, could understand what really meant by any of that, and that's why the movie didn't work so well at the time. But I think that's usually the subject comes back over and over, unless you do, Terminator, where it's just full power, and they're not, you don't see them as members of society. But in the stories where you see them members of society is always a delicate balance, because as we've seen with David on Prometheus, they are smarter than anybody else, but they're put in an inferior position. So that creates a very specific dynamic. For me, I tell you, it's in this story, the reason for it, I think it's more based on my experience and my co-writer experience as Uruguayans landing in Hollywood and trying to to work here and make our movies and fit in, basically. I think that's what everybody does when you come to a city and a country that is not yours, with a language that is not yours. The first instinct is to fit in. So you always on your back foot in a way. You're just trying to learn. So that feeling of being a little bit slower than anybody else, like a little out of place, and it's something that we can connect with, and also which was really truly at the end of what the movie is about is like it's very easy to find when you see yourself, and when which is I think what synthetics represents in the stories many times is the oppressed minority, right? That's usually what they represent. And they might have many talents and many abilities, but in that context, they're gonna be the oppressed minority. And for us, it was an aspect of it was that to see that it's easy to find people that would say, "Yeah, you're an equal. You're just like us. Oh, it's so cool. Your English is so like meaning you're almost like a real person." And all these things, and that's what you get a lot of that when you're in that position. But our feeling is always like, yes, it's easy to say someone is your brother when things are okay, but when shit hit the fan, everybody run into their own families and will close the doors to the ones that don't really like them. So that's what the story's doing when things have got really tricky in that situation, and it becomes very clear that Andy is not one of them. So there's a line that actually Archie improvises when he's begging on his knees and he starts yelling to him, like, "You're just one of us, Andy. You're one of us." He starts saying, like, and it's just too late. And you can feel how it's just too late. So it's truly, a lot of it comes out of that, just the feeling of being an outsider and really questioning when someone tells you, "You're just one of us," and go, "Yeah, am I?" We'll see when things get really bad, because in the history of humanity, that's when the people start separating, who is truly your equal, who's your brother, and who's not. In good times, it's easy to claim we're all the same, but when things get tricky, that's when people show their true colors, and that's really what that is the big part of what inspired that story.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Rook character.
Mhm.
You can tell us a little bit more about the decision to make him have the liking of Ian Holm.
Mhm.
I can tell you from personally, I felt that added a lot of weight to the scenes with him.
Yep.
And also I had the strange feeling of like meeting like an old lost loved one, and we had just a little few more moments with them.
Mhm.
That's how I felt, even though I know it's not, Ash,
Yeah.
but it's still connected so beautifully to the original. Was that your intention?
Yeah,
What
I
was the
mean, we
thought
we
behind
we knew the thought process was very simple. I mean, we thought, okay, we're gonna have a synthetic, and it's gonna be a torso. So I know I'm gonna, with the whole approach of doing things practically as much as we can, we're gonna build an animatronic. And when we're gonna build an animatronic meant like it could have any face, really. It wasn't gonna be a human being. So we got like what it was gonna look like. At first in the script, it was actually a woman. But then. And then talking with Ridley, we came up with this idea of what if it can be any likeness. Would it be awesome that he has a likeness of that is the same assembly line that as Rook as Ash was. It's just because of technology as well of that particular model inside the Renaissance. The Remus is a bit older, and the Remus is kind of the same era of the Nostromo, so that's why technology is kind of similar in some aspects. So we knew that we are going to do that. It kind of makes sense that he would have a synthetic that was the same model, same assembly line that Ash was. And like we've seen in the series before, like that happens a lot. And so we thought that was the organic, that was being faithful to the truth, which is a big principle you're trying to do as a writer. Always, you have to write it on the wall in front of you all the time and look at it, like be faithful to the truth. And that felt like that will make sense. As a science officer here of that era, it would have the same face. And then we went all obviously I would have never done it without the consent of the state, and talked with his widow, and his widow thought that he would have loved to get the call to be an alien movie because he loved that character and he loved that series. and we embark in the way of doing it. And there's some things that I love about it, some things I don't love that much. I would say there's some shots I don't love that much. There's some shots that were way more challenging because of the lines he was saying that made it very difficult in the time and money we had to make it work as like we wanted. And then there's others that I think are incredible, and the guys that worked on it did a fantastic job. And then there's others that it's just 100% almost the animatronic that it's hard to tell when it's what. Sometimes it's easy to tell when it has more CG on the face than others. But some of the shots there, I'm really proud of it. And that was basically the decision. It was mostly that. And from a narrative standpoint, I thought it was going to be cool that if he had the face of Ash, but a little bit at some point, because he's trying to help him, might have a bit more of the Bishop thing of like, you got to do this, you got to get, well, particularly in his relationship with Andy. And at first he actually tells him, as a fan of Alien, if you've seen the other movies, everything that comes out of his mouth is true at the beginning. He's not trying, he has no agenda. He's not trying to fuck him in any way. He's just saying, get out of here. Well, kill her now, And if you've seen the other movies, you go, you should listen to this guy. He's telling you something that is useful. So the kind of the game was going to be, is he going to be Ash or is going to be Bishop? But it's actually something that happens as well on Aliens, right? Like ones forget, but if you watch that movie with those eyes, not knowing who Bishop is, Cameron plays a lot with the idea that maybe he's evil, right? Like when he finds him on the lab, inspecting the face hugger, and he's like, he's fascinated by it, and you go, oh boy, here we go again, like another one. And even when it feels like he has abandoned her on the platform, and it's like, okay, we confirm he was a bad guy, and then shows up. So I think that game is always there, and it's definitely here. But I would say I'm really proud of the writing on that story, watching the movie, and how that really works, and how throughout the whole movie, it's hard to tell if Andy is going to be, on what way he's going to fall in. But that was the same idea with Rook, to try to have him there, have you guessing, is he gonna fuck him or not, or what is, and if what it's doing is a noble mission or not, right? We still I could debate both direction that is actually a noble mission what he's doing. That's why we didn't went into bioweapons. But even if you go to the bioweapons, I could argue that bioweapons might be something that is actually noble, because when you hear Berg talking about it, and you go, oh, he's a bad guy, but you don't know what the wars are going on. Maybe there's terrible words. Maybe there's a planet of very villainous people that actually they don't have a way to get rid of them. And if you knew the story, you would go like, oh, please unleash a bunch of xenomorphs on that planet. So we don't know. We always assume Weyland-Yutani is on the wrong, but I think as a writer, you have to always write them as they have really valid and really strong reasons to do what they do, right?
Yeah, I think that's something I want to circle back on a little bit later, because we have a listener question that kind of speaks to some of that. And just from a personal perspective, I think we've all been on journeys with having Ian Holmes likeness where we felt like it's almost like too strange, or it's kind of like an old friend.
Yeah.
Having seen it now 5 times, I'm coming around to that idea of it really is kind of an old friend, and he's back. And knowing that Ian Holm always wanted that second chance, and that he kind of gets one in death, I think is actually kind of beautiful. So I commend you on that. And I want to go back, speaking of legends, we know Phil Tippett was brought in for some stop motion animation during The Rat. We know Alec Gillis worked on that. Ian Hunter worked on that. There's legends all over this movie. Can you just tell us a little bit about working with some of these, masters?
Well, that was part of the reason for me to make the movie. Almost like it was as soon as we knew we were making it, it was like, oh my God, it's a pleasure. When they asked me, well, who are you going to call? I was like, exactly, knew who I was going to call. And we went after all these people that I grew up watching behind the scenes of them working, and I knew they were still active and super active, but working separately, right? Particularly Alec and Shane from Legacy, and they work together on Aliens, but then they have they're different companies. And the dream for me was kind of get the band back together and get them to work together. Obviously, Ian Hunter had work in Resurrection as well, and with all the miniature work, so it was amazing it was one of the best parts to really get to bring them all together, have them on set working together, collaborating together, helping each other. It was just something beautiful. But also we had a local Hungarian makeup effects person that was amazing, and he was also like he grew up on this. Guys learned so much from them, and he got to work with them as well. You know, collaborate on all these gags. So it was the best part of it. So the Phil Tippett of it all as well, and a lot of it was always with a reason, not just for the fact of being whimsical and I want to bring this guy. It's not. I think the rat in stop motion was going to look way better than a CG rat, and I think it does. You know, it's like because it was a time lapse, it justified the flaws that it might have. I think in a time lapse, it's totally fine because it's supposed to be quick and you can see the fur moving and all this little things of stop motion and I think the guys did a great job. So the same with every one of these choices. They're made because I think it's the best choice for the shot, for the movie. And plus I get to work with them. But obviously what comes first is what's best for the film.
I think that scene was beautiful. I think it was really well made.
Thank you.
One of the hallmarks, which I'm sure you're aware of the first film, was like the utter unexplained mystery and wonder of some of the elements the film introduces. For example, when we see the derelict, it's like, what the hell is this? And then we see the jockey, what the hell is that? Then the same thing with the facehugger and the Xeno. This is like extremely difficult to achieve, and I think that you hit the mark with the Cocoon and the Offspring. Especially seeing the film at like a crowded theater, the reaction of the audience was just incredible. It's like a once in a lifetime experience for me, at least. Can you talk about that, about attempting to recreate that wonder, that what in the hell am I looking at?
Well, it's kind of the big challenge of these things, right? You're not remaking a movie. We had no intentions to remake any of the movies. We knew we needed a new story, and the story level doesn't resemble any of them really at story level, right? The story we're telling is very different from the other ones. Now you're trying to recreate the emotions. You're trying to give the emotions that I got when I watched the original films. And like I think I explained this in the past. It's almost like I'm sure it happened to you guys. Like you talk with someone young, maybe a teenager, or and you explain about this thing with Alien, and they go like, "Yeah, I don't know, I haven't seen them. Yeah, they don't care." And you go, "Fucking hell!" And you're trying to transmit to them how cool it is and how scary it was, and they go like, "Yeah, I gotta believe you." And then maybe you show them one of the movies, and they're like, "It's not that scary." And so that's something that I went through, and basically it's like I telling that teenager, I'm telling him, okay, wait here. I go away 3 years, come back with the movie. I go, no, watch this. It's a way for me to explain it, but to update it to a modern audience with a different language and show it to them, and then they're scared. Then they're truly, against the wall. But I have to do that as well, knowing that there's a generation like mine. They're fans. They've seen it already. They've seen the other ones. So you have to tell it in a different way that won't make you guys go like, okay, I've seen this already, but I know exactly what's going to happen, and that takes away from your experience. So every step of the way, you try to do something slightly different. Even the chest burst, when that scene comes and you think, I think the way it's executed is what those guys did. I think it's way better than any of the other movies, I would say. I mean, it doesn't have the shock value that definitely had on the first Alien, but if I show it to any audience today, compare the two, they will say ours is better. Just because it's more realistic, it's slow, it's the technique that the guys use on the chest burster. It's just fantastic, right? It's almost a documentary. So I think those things, was hoping that when people in my generation will see it, will go, wow, that I've never seen, the chest burster being born in real life, almost, right? Looking for the scent of the mother, and having that sort of like very slow, more realistic birth, because I think he's exhausted after all that chest banging, right? So that was one of them. The Cocoon was one of them as well, because we thought we could add something without betraying the canon, without contradicting anything that happens in the other movies. particularly in the first one. Particularly when also you have the delete scene on the first one, where obviously you see the eggs on the wall. So there is more to it, even if you accept that or not. It's part of the thing. There's more happening in the ship that we don't know about it, and so I think that's acceptable. And it had that shock level as well. You know, the crowning that it does when it starts being born, the opening of the arms, like all those things that I think again Shane and his team executed flawlessly. And but plus also if you I don't think you get to see it clearly in the movie, but the cocoon is kind of blend in with the ship. So you see all the tubes on the wall, like running through the wall, and they start turning into some organic matter, and they turn to cocoon, which for me was a good way to justify why does he have all the biomechanical aspect of the creature, because it's almost like it taken the energy, like if in a way, like it's taken the DNA of the mechanics of the ship and amalgamating it with his own, and so that's why then, like again, for a new generation, for a new audience, haven't seen it. If they see that and then they see that it's growing, has these pipes on the side of his head, you go, oh fuck, look at that! Like it's kind of born out of the mix of the ship and in its own DNA. So I thought that was cool, and that would definitely get a good wow moment. And again, I think the first one obviously has it's just a whole alien. It's just unbeatable. Like you would never go into a movie like this. Go, I think we're gonna try to do better than Alien. There's just no fucking way. I think that all you could do is really hope that you're gonna entertain people for 2 hours, and you're not gonna betray the legacy of the originals, and that you're gonna somehow stay in your lane, but really trying to impress people by doing but a lot of movies these days don't do, right? But it was definitely, and obviously the Offspring at the end, the Offspring was always what kept me up at night on the first during the first weeks of shooting, because we hadn't seen him. We knew what we were going to do. We knew we were going to have Robert Bobrovsky to play him. We had some concept art, but we hadn't seen him moving, and we didn't even know if Robert was going to pull it off, if he could really do it. Like to do the performance is so hard. You have no idea. It doesn't matter how much makeup and how tall you are. If you cannot really go for it and perform and do it, and I think he created a great character, and the way he moved, the way he reacts to his mother when the mother is pushing him away. There's so many fantastic moments of his performance that transcend the makeup and his height. That it wasn't until we did a camera test and I saw that I was like, oh fuck, now we have a movie. I remember telling the studio, now we do have a movie, guys, because without an ending, without something that you haven't seen before that surprises you, you don't really have a full thing, right? So that was one of the big elements. Then again, it always works differently between the fans and the non-fans, which is then what's the fan has to remind, at least I remind my fans friends all the time. And believe me, when when I obviously I heard your first reaction. None of you seemed to like the movie. I was like, it's a shame this guy didn't like the movie. And then I heard the second podcast, and you were like, no, it's actually not. We don't hate it that much anymore. I was like, oh, good. We don't hate it that much. And I don't blame you at all, because I think that is the process that at least with my favorite bands, that's the process I've always been when the new album comes out. I remember with Metallica when, if I'm coming from Justice for All and just the Black Album comes out, it's like, what the fuck is this? Oh, they sold out. Fucking hell. You just complain. And then the worst thing happened. People that never cared about it say like, hey, I love Metallica. And you're like, the fuck are you talking about? So it's more insulting that people that never care now say it's cool. And it's this kind of mix of people getting your stuff that you love, and the stuff you love is not what it is anymore, has changed. But then a lot of times with what happened to me with a lot of those albums, I hear it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I go like, this is actually pretty good. Is actually pretty cool. Um, I think some of my favorite stuff. Usually, my first reaction is this is shit, so, which is particularly music. It happens to me a lot. With movies, I had a similar journey with Force Awakens. Been a big Star Wars fan, but used to be. I don't know if anybody can be today seriously a Star Wars fan anymore. But at least I was at that time still in a bit of my life, and when Force Awakens was coming out, it was like at the Chinese theater around with the queue around the block. Can't wait to see it. And I was so disappointed. I was like, what the fuck is this? It's a remake. What have they done? I was cutting Don't Breathe at the time, and I went back to editorial, and all I did was complain about it the next few weeks. And then I went to see it again. And the next time I saw it, it started kind of coming around. And then one day I goes like, fuck it, that's the only movie they could really do. The movie they could do, because if they would have done the movie just for me, it would have been the last one. And I tell you, if I would have done the Alien movie that was just for me and for you guys, like that moves forward, it goes into it would have been the last one ever made. Because it would have alienated such a big part of the audience that no one would have showed up. People that would have showed up would go, what the fuck is this thing? And it would be a small group of people that are the hardcore fans that know every detail of it, going like super pleased. But that would have been the last one, because it wouldn't have worked for the masses. So that is the tricky balance that these movies have to do. You have to do it for us, and you have to do it in a way for a new audience. And the best example of that, I think, is the controversy of the "Get Away from Her, You Bitch," which I tell you, if I haven't seen the movie with the crowd many times, there's no way that doesn't get a massive cheer of the audience. I don't know if you guys know, but it's fucking hard to get a theater to cheer these days about anything that happened in the movie. People are so indifferent and they're like, yeah, whatever. And to get them, there's two things that always happen. They cheer on that, also they gasp in amazing ways when the offspring is revealed. And it's so difficult to engage an audience for so long, particularly because at that point you go this 1 hour, 45 minutes into the movie, right? And if at that point they cheer that way, it's because they're fully in it. But at the same time, that's what I would love to see if I get an image of that. I know there's two people sitting together in that crowd. One is cheering, and the other one is fucking rolling his eyes, going like, "Fucking hate this," right? Like I think Jamie probably said, "Fucking hate this thing at this moment." and I'm like, it's totally fine. You're like, I didn't write it in the script. It was something that while we were shooting it, I went to David, and there was no line originally. There was no line, and we felt like there's a vacuum in that moment. It felt that emptiness that you needed the release. And I think Rhoda was there. My co-writer was like, maybe you should say, "Just get off my sister" or something. And I was like, yeah, okay, great. But then you cannot help but to go to all the great moments in cinema of it's just been revoked, and I think about whatever multiple like one-liners of amazing send-offs in movies. And so we start thinking maybe we should try something, and then you start feeling worse to try to top it. Are we gonna try to top Get Away from Her, bitch? Like there's just no way. So you were going to think, and very quickly without thinking too much about it, I went to the actor, I went to David, I was like, you know what, like, do you mind trying this? And even David was like, don't make me say that. I'm like, don't worry, just try it, and then we'll see an editorial. And then I wasn't going to put it. And then when we test the movie for the first time, I was like, well, the whole point of testing is just to test it, see if it works. And I thought, oh, let's put it in. And I know it's silly, but let's put it in and see what happens. And we tested with 600 people, in a theater in Sacramento, and the whole place blew up. Like they went nuts. And I was confused because I was like, are there such hardcore fans that they love the callback? But then I realized, no, they just not. They just fucking love the line in that particular moment. And also in the movie, I think it's earned because he's been called a bitch 3 times by Bjorn in the film, or a couple times. So he's just learning, like the Terminator learns "Hasta la vista, baby," where he's just trying to, and because he promised his sister that by the end he's going to see him as a man and not a child, he turns around to him, he like is trying to be cool and say one line, that was basically it. So that moment there where I'm sure it happens, someone rolls their eyes and go, "Fuck this," and someone next to them is cheering, reduce in a nutshell what's happening with this film. It is, and you got to do it for everybody, but it's a tricky balance. But I'm aware of how much in a way it bothered the callbacks, bother the fans, which but I could go all day about because I'm actually defend them in a way that is the lines particularly, right? That the "Get Away from Me, bitch" is the most one that I'm like, okay, that because it's so too similar to the other one, and it makes you go, how come it could that happen? And it might take you out because you don't believe that could have happened, in the same universe, as coincidence. But I think humans beings repeat lines all the time. It's the same universe, so it might be an expression that in that world they use. But then the other ones, when you think about, even when Rook says, I can lie about your chances. He's a fucking robot. He has a certain limited amount of language program. I would say, if I'm faithful to the truth, it would be weirder if he goes like, "Hey, I don't think he looks good, but good luck." But you go like, "What?" That would be weirder. He has to say he has a limit. He's an old model. Like, I don't think you have the billion expressions in their brain. So when that model wants to say someone that their chances are not really good, that's what he's programmed to say. The same about the perfect organism, or I don't know. You can tell me. I'm sure you know all the offenses of the lines that we repeated. But if it comes from a robot, it's like, dude, he's a robot. He's the same model. He's gonna say the same shit. There's no, what I mean?
It's funny. I heard somebody complain that Rain says "die motherfucker" because that's Hudson's last line when he is being pulled under. I'm like, come on, you've got to let that go. That is too much of a
That's
nitpick.
not that for sure. No.
So now, one aspect of the film that I think that we all love is the Corbelan or the Corbelan. It's
Mhm.
pronounced two different ways in the film. And right off the bat, thank you for the Joseph Conrad reference. That is a
Yeah,
wonderful
of course. Yeah.
continuation of that. Is Rain Carradine by any chance named after John Carradine from The Duelists?
Yes. Yeah. And if you
Yes.
actually
Okay.
go to that's kind of a Jedi mind trick that I pull sometimes, and filmmakers like it happened with Ridley. I think it did. I don't know if he did something similar with Sam on Evil Dead, but if you go, there's two of them. I think when I was naming the characters, I want to make sure that when Ridley read it in a subconscious level, said like, I don't know why I like these names. I like these names. But it's a combination of two actors actually on that movie. Is you have Carradine, but also Rains is the name of the other actors. The other actor, I'm trying to remember her name. I'm trying to look it up. But if you look it up, you'll see it. Is the female lead of that movie is called also like Rain, is like Rain. Anyways, yes, you got it. Go from there.
So the Corbelan, amazingly, like the chest bursting happens there, the cocoon happens there, the offspring
Christina
happens there.
Rains. Sorry, that's the name of it.
Christina Rains.
Yeah.
But so many of these iconic moments in your film actually happen in the tiny little ship. And how was it working with Matthew Savage and Ian Hunter, making this one vehicle have all of these compartments and have it make sense so the audience doesn't get lost? Because that's an amazing trick.
It was a very simple layout, actually. I mean, you had the, it actually is done to scale, and we didn't cheat on that. Sometimes you cheat on the scales of things, but we didn't. I think it's just the ships usually look smaller from the outside, and that happened to me with Nostromo for years. Like, it wasn't really until at some point I went to in a deep dive, I really understand, and I go like, fucking hell, that ship is massive. But on the first watch of the movie, you don't think it's as big as it actually is, right? I don't know, maybe you guys felt that the first time, but it took me a while to understand how big the Nostromo actually is, and plus the refinery behind it, just a fucking city. But here it was more about make it simple. It's a minor truck. It's supposed to be the kind of truck that refills the Tessotech, which is the refinery. They actually say that at the beginning of the movie. And not only that, I think in my mind is they are part of the Solomons, probably where they are right now, where from where the Nostromo is coming back at the beginning of Alien. If you go into the canon of the books and stuff, there you'll find that. I'm sure you guys know there's all this system of some planet moons, and so probably this system is around there, is coming from there. So the ships like the Nostromo will take the refinery there, and from those mines the minerals will come out, and the Corbellans will just go up there, reload the Tessotech. It's just too big to go down to the planet, right? So they just hover above. Corbellans go up, reload, and then a towing truck like the Nostromo will take them back to Earth. So that was the logic of it. So when you was simple, and it was a bit of a crane, it has basically the clamps and one hallway, above it's basically one big corridor with the cargo bed in the back, with the cargo bay in the back, and they have the suit up area that we call in the front with the airlock. and then obviously the little that airlock that takes you downstairs to the big sandhopper, right? And we see if you, I'm sure you saw it in the second view that when they arrive into the mines, you can see one of them like actually the Corbellion 4 is like docking on top of the sandhopper. So it's a matter of keeping it simple. To show it enough from the outside is incredible. The amount of times you need to show it for people to get their head around the geography of it, but I think it's something very important. And it was something that James Cameron on my conversations with him about it when he, when we were just thinking about the movie at the beginning, and then we had another conversation when he saw the cut. That was something he insisted on, that make sure that people understand the geography. That is very important for the enjoyment of this movie, is to understand where people are. And so we were very faithful to the reality of where things are in the Renaissance, where things are inside the Corbellion, and make sure we never cheated on anything. I will go out of my way to make sure the geography makes sense and what direction they run in, where's the hive, why is the hive there, and all the things, right? So if there's any inconsistencies, please let me know. I'll debate you to death.
Just quick though, that's a hallmark of your filmmaking. You like in Don't Breathe, you have that wonderful tracking shot showing the interior of the house, and in this film, thanks to the cameras, you show us, and you even labeled this is the suit up room, this is the
Yeah.
airlock, and so I knew like, okay, this is going to be important because he's highlighting these different areas of the ship. So
Yeah, that was
fantastic.
exactly the intention. Like when we did that, we had that later on the cut. I remember the little screens pop in, but I know that people that know when it starts, you go, okay, that's gonna be where shit's gonna go down, that corridor, this, that, and it's a good way to prep you for that and not feel cheated when when things, scenes and climaxes go down in those spaces.
So I'm just keeping an eye on time here. We have about 15 minutes left. I think if it's okay with the team, we're going to skip a little bit. And just quick, I'm going to do the listener question next, if that's okay. And then we'll go to the
What
team.
time is it? We can do it. It's fine. It's fine. I think I think I have a hard out at 10, 10:45, 10:50. Yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
I know.
Thanks,
But why don't
Fede.
we,
Yeah.
if it's okay, let's skip to the listener question anyway, just so we make sure we get that in there. Is that okay, Christian? Okay. Thank you, Fede. So we asked on social media for people to, give us one question to ask you. We got about 300 responses from it, so we whittled them down to two. The second one, the one that I want to bring up, is from a listener named Alex Edward Mikel on IG, and it's a two-parter. So the first one is, what's the thing that you fought for most while you were making this movie? That's the first part. And the second one is, other than isolation, which, by the way, that was amazing to see how much isolation was in this movie. What story from the extended universe, what other kind of alien story had an effect on this?
Um, I think well, when it comes to the fighting, I think it was a lot of it was just to do it practically, to just to build all the animatronics and all that at first. And it's not that the studio doesn't believe in it, it's not that. It's like all the studios and making certain films have gone too many times through the path of a filmmaker that says, I want to do everything practical, and then a lot of times they just fail on the day. Not because the practical is not well built, it's because it's really hard to shoot. I tell you, some of the animatronics, well, it's the best of the best, but I put the camera in the wrong place and the light in the wrong place, it will look like shit. It will look like a piece of plastic. And so it's an art, the just really get in there, just make it look great. So a lot of times they go through the process of, they do it and then they have to pay twice. They have to pay for all the costs of the practical and then all the costs of the CG to replace it. And that's why I remember a lot of people when we were promoting, saying how much practical we had, I had to, you go online and there was so much people like, they got to replace it all in CG later, forget about it, blah, 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 all that good positive attitude. and and I was like, oh, okay, I hope they're wrong. And we managed to keep everything that was planned to do practical. It's practical. I think we really succeeded, and the studio is super happy about it because that's exactly what they hope it's going to happen. But they've been burned in the past. There's been many movies that went that way, and then they didn't felt it was good enough, and they had to change it. So that was a big part. But they came around when they started seeing the tests and everything we've done. They was like, oh, these guys know what they're doing, and they trust us to do it that way. I would have done even more practical, I'd say. I think I had to at some point settle of like, okay, this is the amount of things we'll do practical, and these are the things we have to do digitally. I think I would have done. I think probably looking back, I would have done more practical on the spaceships. I would have built the Renaissance station and do more practical because that's the other thing we didn't build. We built the Echo Probe at the beginning, and we built the Corbellin, which some of the shots you actually see in the movie is full on miniatures, against the screen. We shot with Ian Hunter. Then but the Renaissance, I would have loved to have a big Renaissance model and put it against a LED wall with the planet and really get photography of that. But I think the work that ILM and Weta did on those exterior space shots, guided by Eric Barba or VFX supervisors, like look fucking amazing, and they really have a scope and level of detail that's hard to get with a miniature, because you can tell this, you have to build it so big to be able to really get something that looks closer to that. And also the interaction, obviously, with the rings and all the madness of that would be tricky, but I think it's doable. I'm a madman when it comes to those things, and I always believe it's worth trying, and I'm optimistic that you'll be surprised usually with the practical. So that would be probably the hardest fight at the beginning to convince to go as practical as we went with the sets and with the creatures, to really build the ceilings and build all the sets as big as we could, without depending on CG extensions. Then we had a couple of we didn't even do, and the times that we did extensions, most of the time we just did like paint backdrops, like someone would paint at hand just art and just put in the back. So it's not a CG set. It's just really, if you look at it directly, you go like, that's a painting in the back. And but that's how, on when you see the Sulaco for the first time and the pan around, you look at it first just straight to this painting and just the backdrop, and then you find into reality, and I still love how it looks. So we did some of that in some of the shots. But that would say was one of the big parts. Then what was the second part of the question?
Just if there's things other than isolation, alien
Oh,
storylines that had an influence on
it
this.
was so much of it because so many. Because what I did in preparation for the movie was to read and read, a lot of alien stuff from, the movies I know by heart, but of course you go back and you see them a billion times again, and then to go into the comic books, to go in some of the novels. One of the things I would say, this hopefully doesn't get me in trouble, but I believe that I love this idea of when the Nostromo blows up, that the consciousness of Ash is put into Narcissus. So, and is that Out of the Shadows? Is that, yeah. So
Yes.
so I love that idea that justify why, she gets lost for so many years, and the idea that something that at least another one adventure happened to Ripley before she got to the event of aliens. And because that way you can justify that in a way Rook and Ash share the same consciousness, which is not crazy to think because he's a computer, he's mother is all of them. It's just one operating system. That it's not that he has to tell another synthetic something he doesn't know. Andy is completely out of the grid. I think that's why he's an outsider somehow. But otherwise, I think any synthetic that is actually working inside the station, working for Weyland-Yutani, it shares the same consciousness. That's why there's a moment where, if you look at the movie, before he goes to talk with Rook, David suddenly hears like a calling, right? He turns around and there's something. He's reacting to something and we don't know what it is, and then we cut and he's in front of Rook. And he says, I heard a voice in my head calling. But that's a way of saying they're all connected. They're all one and the same consciousness. They just communicate between them, which makes sense in a system of, if he's a computer, right, at the end of the day. So that is something that it was inspired by that. And as some of you already discover, we explored at some level in this movie, right? This idea that Ash really survived on the Narcissus and had something to do with what came later. Right?
Very interesting.
See you all nodding with like perverse smiles.
I mean,
Very. Uh, so we spoke with so many people who worked on the film for you, like sound design, concept art, VFX, creature design,
Mhm.
and without exception, we heard excitement and gratitude to even be, included in the making of an Alien film. Can you speak a little bit to the task of assembling such a team, a talented team, and also from all of these people about how Alien means so much to so many people?
Mhm.
How do you explain that? And maybe you can also touch a little bit about what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's many parts to go into choosing the right team, right? It's always tricky. The I think probably what I wanted, and it was just me, right? Me and Neiman Marshall, production designer, when it comes to go out to the concept designers and the sound guys when I had to hire them, like everybody, I think it was a combination. Obviously, you need to be really, really talented people that I would consider the best at what they do. So we only went out to get the best of the best in every department. And that was a big part, but also that they have to be that. Ideally, if it's people that I work with in the past, is always better. Like I know them, there's a shorthand, we work better. Like there's less room for bad surprises of bad chemistry that might happen. Even between very talented people, you can find people that are not compatible on the way they work, and you have an issue. So Naaman Marshall with someone that was a production designer on Don't Breed. So I couldn't wait to work with him again. And there was a lot of people involved in the movie that worked with me in the past. Pedro Luque, who was the DP on Don't Breed, he couldn't do it. He was going to do it originally, but he was doing Society of the Snow. So I got Gallo, which is brilliant. And but Pedro also came and did second unit. And so there's a lot of great shots in the movie that are Pedro's. Actually, one of I think probably one of the ones that I've seen the most. The floating shot of rain going towards the acid from behind, which was the most beautiful shot that was shot by Pedro. Um, so that there's a lot of old collaborators, which is a big part as well. And then the third one, which is very important, is like to test their passion for Alien, to how much they care about it, because you didn't want someone that didn't care, didn't understand it, and because then it's too much to explain and to try to get them to understand why it's special, what's the vibe, what makes it work, when Alien works best and when it doesn't work so well. There's been so many experiments in all this, 45 years of Alien movies that you have to be you have to be savvy enough to look back and go, okay, they tried that already, did not work. That worked. This, because there's been so many great filmmakers working on this franchise. So it's like that's a privilege for me of doing one. It's just to be able to look at all the experiments of all these other filmmakers and kind of get some conclusions of what works better and what doesn't work so well, and do it so when your team knows the same, like it helps them too. The sound guys were experts on Alien, and they really went back to recreate a lot of the sounds, and a lot of them they recreate them from scratch. It's not that they get those tapes don't exist anymore, but from the first film particularly, but they did such a good job of like creating the vibe of it, which is, I tell you guys, it's like it's so hard to get it right. All you have to do is go to see Outland, like the Sean Connery movie. That's all the team that work on Alien, like the production design, I believe. I mean, you fact check me on that, but I think a lot
Right.
of people that work on Alien went straight to that one. That movie does not look at all like Alien. Really, it looks like it's kind of sad to me. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. I think it's actually a good movie. It has some wacky, quick, crazy moments, but it's a good movie. And as alien as it feels, and if anybody's listening to this and haven't seen that movie and love Alien, you should go watch it because it's like some strange cousin to Alien, right? But what that showed me was that even if you get all the same people and they think they know how to do it, they can fail and not do it right. And it's little details, but it's like the color palette is wrong. They do buttons on the walls that are just colors that you will never see an Alien, and so it throw you off, and it just feels unholy. It just feels like it's closer, but it's not. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys enjoy that movie, but watching it, I remember like although I enjoy the story, I was like fucking hell, like it feels like this copy basically. It felt like a copy. Even when it's done with all the same people, it feels like a copy. What's wrong here? And it's like it's just not the same. And so on our movie, we made sure to look at all the colors of the buttons that you see inside the cockpit of the Nostromo. Like we reduce it to a color palette, and then here we went and do it again, on the Corbellion cockpit, like to make sure that we didn't betray that. And then that's why you look at the frame and go, wow, that could be out of the other movie, right? That's really what we're trying to achieve, that you could take a frame from our movie, put it among the frames of the original, and it will take you a moment to find it, right? That was kind of the rule. And in order to do that, that's why you need to be very, very familiar and not only that, but really be obsessed about getting it right. And in order to do that, you need to respect the original so much, right? And that was a big part of getting everybody involved with anybody that was going to work here needed to really respect it and understand it.
Speaking of people who worked on it, this was, of course, a chance to work with Ridley Scott. And I know Ridley said in a few places that he was mostly involved during the post-production, like the editing process.
Mhm.
Who maybe we'll get him on the show at some point. We don't really know, but it's pretty cool to get to talk to somebody who worked that closely with him. Can you give us some insights into like what some things that he kind of pushed for were? Were there moments where you guys kind of disagreed and had to find a way to get through it? What's he like as a producer and as like an editing partner?
Oh, he's great. I mean, he knows obviously the first movie really well. He understand what made it work. He understand what was powerful about it, and so when it comes to the script level, he knew what to focus on, and he also was aware that as far as he's concerned, like the creature was not scary anymore. It had lost its juice through all these years, and people know it too. They were too familiar with it, so it was a good reminder of not depending too much on it, not depending too much on the xenomorph to all the fear factor of the film. Though I think it for the new audience it's pretty effective, as it's still very effective as a scary creature. Um, but he believed we didn't want to depend on that. It shouldn't depend on it, and so we made sure to have a story that regardless of the horror will keep you hooked. And I think that's the story of Rain and Andy. Like you need to know how it ends once that relationship is broken and they go in separate ways, and you kind of need, you can't wait. You need to know how it's going to pan out. And so that was a big part of those conversations with him at the beginning, to make sure we had more than just a scary creature. And then on the editing, phase, it was just he's all about pacing. He's all about making sure the movie doesn't lose momentum and that you don't bore the audience. And so it was really about cutting it down to the bone. So I think probably the movie first was 2 hours, 2 hours 20 maybe. And then I went through a process of that I always go in my movies of madness, where I just start hating everything about it and just get rid of everything out of the movie, which is a place that unfortunately I have to go at some point. I'm the one that suffered the most when I go through that phase, but I'm going like, hey, this is shit, is all shit. I have to get rid of all this, and I kill everything that feels that is not 11 points, right, out of 10. So I take all that out, and then I look at the movie and go, okay, it's not that it doesn't make sense, but you go like, it feels empty, feels like it needs more, and then you start bringing back the thing. So but by doing that, you just bring back just the crucial things. You go like, this must be in the movie in order to make sense. This must be in the movie in order to have propulsion, or like we must slow it down at this point, and this must come back. And that process is way more effective. So because what you're left of at the end is the things that needed to be there. There's nothing there that doesn't belong there. And there's a lot of our conversations were about those things, specifically what we wanted to keep or he wanted to get rid of. I don't really remember. There was always back and forth on those things. He will give me his list of things that he considered. I think you could lose all this. Some things I did, some things I fought back. I was like, no, I think this should stay. And I think the movie doesn't have any pacing problems. It's not a slow movie. I think the first hour is intentionally slow because I think you're playing, the style of Alien. You got to be a slow burn, and even Aliens, nothing fucking happens for an hour until they get there. So till they enter the hive. So that was something I felt like confident that we could make work, that we could pull it off, to have a slow burn beginning, and then when it goes, it fucking goes, right? So, but that was it was great. He's been so generous, and we really, really got along. And I have nothing but great, I had nothing but a great experience with him working on this. And he supported the movie where, with something that is so close to him it's difficult for any filmmaker that has been related to something that then suddenly he's not the one making directing it. It's always difficult for directors. And he was super, super amazing. What can I say? He was the best.
So the movie's doing wonderfully in the theater. We know that Marvel has a prequel comic coming out next month,
Mhm.
but as fans, we're looking for more. The Blu-ray release, is it going to have special features? The Alien films have a long tradition of director's cuts. Are we going to look for a director's cut? And then
They're gonna,
finally, we need your
yeah.
help on this, Fede. We need an art book.
Yeah.
Titan has got to put out an art book. We started to
Yeah,
go.
I never had any of those in my movies. I don't even know how that goes. I'm assuming, like, I don't know, it start from their side. I'll ask the studio. That's all I can do, because there's so much art that is great. I think these days people, because they see it online, a lot of it, like maybe but I guess they'll do it. I mean, the movie has been a big hit, and again, those guys, the team that we had was incredible. It's a total dream team of concept artists, and that did an amazing job. So I really hope it happens. I just don't know who to call. I really don't know who's the door you gotta knock there to make it happen. But I would definitely love one.
If it's any help, we started a petition
I don't think those
collecting
things that would
signatures.
never work.
I'm
No.
serious.
I don't think those things ever work. Has the petition ever done anything in this business? I mean, has it? It's a real question. I don't know in the past, like people have done
Ah,
petitions online to shut down a movie or like have they ever
uh,
had any effect?
Here's the thing. When The Predator and Covenant came out, they
Yeah.
each got a novelization, a prequel novel, and an art book.
Yeah.
Then the merger happened. It became Disney owned. Prey got nothing.
Oh, okay.
So we're in this new, Disney universe or 20th century universe where I think they're a little risk averse, but you've just made so much money for them. They
Yeah,
they
it's
need
most basically on that. I think remember there's a new era for them of 20 where I felt like Disney felt like, well, we bought the studio, we don't know what to do with it. It's such a different brand, and they're trying to figure it out. And I think now with the success of Prey and Apes and now this, I think hopefully Disney will go, wow, that's a great studio with great IPs, and they know what they're doing. And people that work there are really talented and really love film, and it's not your average studio that just look to make a buck. And they really love their movies, and they're great partners on this. They'll be the first one who want to have the book. So that's why it usually is more of a publisher probably that feels there's a business on selling these, and so that it will probably go for that. But I'll make sure, I'll do everything I can on my side to make sure it happens. I would fucking love to have a book with all the art.
we would love to have that.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're dealing with a bunch of hyper-focused, diehard Alien fans, right? As I'm sure yourself too, obviously,
Yeah.
but like we're just like, what else can we have? Please, anything.
I got my
Fede,
my NECA toys, and I got the Funkos recently. I was like happy about that.
hey, so do we. I could, yeah, don't look at go in my basement. Box is full.
I love it.
Um, no, so my mom was she was my high school Spanish teacher. She taught Spanish for 33 years. So in that light, I know you'd said earlier, being faithful to the truth was like a piece of advice that you stuck to and stick to throughout your writing process. Um, Thinking about that and just like your experience growing up, learning how to make movies, going to school for screenwriting, like is there a favorite teacher you had? And like what is like one piece of advice for future filmmakers that just sticks with you today that you keep close to your heart?
Hey, look, I think, yeah, I mean, I would say my father. My father was actually the head of when I went to communication school after high school in Uruguay, and my father was the head of the film this option. You do communication, you can do journalism or film, and I did film, and he was the chairman of that option. So imagine, at home was very politically charged discussions about what college should be, what they should be teaching us, and they're not teaching us. And my father go like, "Oh, please, I have this all day at school. I don't have it here at home." So it was that sort of having the head of the union that I was, and the president of the school of that option, at home together. So it was a bit chaotic. But he was a big film lover, and he's the one that passed all the passion for it. I think, like, unfortunately, with advice, it's really hard for filmmakers. I was really lucky that I was born in Uruguay, where there was no chance I was going to have a career in film. So filming and cutting things together and telling stories, the currency that they will pay you, that the world will pay you with, was never money. It was just emotions. That's what I trade in. Like, I would cut something together, show it to a bunch of friends, and I will get the joy and the laugh and the what the fuck is that? And that's all the payment that I wanted. And it still is that way at some level. It's so when you don't see it as a job and you see it as just something you cannot help to do, that's when you're great at it, right? That's when you're best at it. When you just, I gotta do this because I cannot help it. And there's no, I think what I've seen the most when I come here to LA, and when I moved to LA and I went to film schools here, the big difference that I saw that kind of broke my heart was like, oh, the students are growing up in a city where it's very fucking real for them, that they might end up working in the business, because a lot of people do, and they know people that do, and they have a friend that knows this guy at a studio. So then that paralyzed them a lot of times. And the question I get asked the most is like, what should I do to break into the industry? I'm gonna try. Someone told me once, I remember, like, I want to fucking slap him. He was like, I think I do a shorter horror because I think horror seems to work pretty well. I was like, fuck, man, you're soulless. You're dead inside. Like, if you tell me you're gonna do horror because it's what it seems people want to hear, it's like, it's the saddest thing ever. Like, my question is always, what do you want to do? Because it has to come out of your own passion and love for something. It cannot never come based on what you think other people want to see or hear you do it. And that's the biggest problem here. I was back home, I didn't have that problem. I knew I was never going to work on this. I was going to do something else. Um, so it was when I was a teenager, I was shooting short movies all the time with my friends, and edited in camera. There was no editing gear or anything like that in the 90s. And for us, and then when I started doing it a bit more seriously, suddenly I got people to want to pay me to do a music video, stuff like that. I was like, oh, fucking great. I would have done it for free. And till today, it's still a bit of my spirit with these things. I would never do any movie that I wouldn't do for free. Like, just that I can't help but to do. So a lot of the things that make you good at what you are is just to, obviously, the craft of just doing and doing, and the more you do it, the better you get at what you do. And really, mostly, to not be distracted by anything that doesn't belong to the process, which is, if the thing is going to be successful, is if you're going to be, I don't know, whatever you're going to get out of it, you're going to get out of the success of the movie. Well, that doesn't belong to the process of making movies. So thank God I was raised in a way where there was going to be never a reward, but that the reward was the making itself, and that's what I think it's missing and along young filmmakers, that it's just obsessed too much about how to break in, what to do, how to impress. I made a $300 short movie back home called Panic Attack. I put it on YouTube just to be able to send a link to my friends that I wanted to impress with. Sure, that was like, oh, look at this thing we did, and that's the only reason why it was on YouTube. I wasn't expected to send it to I wasn't expecting any exposure to the world. It was just to have a link that I could send to my friends. And I went to bed, woke up the next day, and I have, like, 150 emails from Hollywood, and they dragged us down here, and we started a career. But it was never the intention. But it's hard because it's impossible for someone that is here or in this world we live now, where those stories exist. It's really hard to convince a young filmmaker, it's never happen. It's never going to happen to you. And unfortunately, if someone tells them it's never going to happen to you, they think that person is not helping them. It's like fuck you, like you and that person might be helping them because that's the way that my dad will do that to me. We go like, dude, just sure you want to shoot something, whatever, but you get a real job, I worked in after high school and even at college. I dropped out at some point and I worked in City Hall in Uruguay at the in necropolis, which is the department that deals with cemeteries. So I had to write the name of where the dead person is and what cemetery is, and like updating all these old books, moving all this data on old books into computers. I did that for a while, and I had the shittiest jobs at the time because I never thought I was going to ever make movies or to do anything with the stuff we do today. But so that's why that shit, you don't learn any of that through advice. There's no magic world anybody can give you. Either you were raised in the right place that sometimes is the wrong place, and or you are not. So, but I think the main thing is to make sure you do it for the right reasons. That is the only piece of advice that I think people here gave me a few times. And when you think about what to do, to make sure you do what you do for the right reasons. And that's an easier question for everybody to ask themselves. Is this really, I mean, am I doing this because I want to tell this story, because I cannot help it, or I'm doing this because I think it works, because I think this is what's been working lately, or I think it's what this other people are doing, so it seems to be working, and that's when you're fucked, when you just following the trend of what everybody else is doing.
Amen. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
When I met you in Montepalooza, and I asked you about recreating the atmosphere, and you gave this beautiful analogy of a restaurant when I was 12, and we went and had a burger over there. I just wanted to tell you that this experience, I felt like I was, back at that restaurant having a very similar burger, not the exact same burger, but a very similar one. And I wanted to thank you for creating this this incredible thing that is, now part of this film series that is beloved, especially by us. And yeah, it's an incredible achievement.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought you guys were gonna give me more shit. What's expected? This guy's
Well,
complains a lot. Okay, what happened
that.
then? Just the love about it. Okay, like you were more disappointed at the beginning. Now you're like, but because that's it really is what like I that's what I do with my friends back home. Right? I go there and they give me shit about it, and so there's no problem whatsoever.
We stayed up till
you can
3 in the
complain
morning.
and say I don't. Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I went deep into that episode because okay, I get it. They didn't like it as a pity.
Oh.
And then I heard the second one that I did listen entirely, the last one you guys did, and we were like, oh no, we kind of some of us because you had different experience, you watch it again. I think mostly when you see it with new people and you see it through their eyes, you understand better. Wow, that's what working. It's really hard for. I mean, I don't know what the movie is. You guys know better than me what the movie is because when you make it, you're the last person that understands what the film is, right? Like you just can take a guess of what the thing is going to be on the paper, but when we make it, then you don't know. And for you guys as well, being such fans, it's hard as well. It's just to be disconnect from all the all the other ones and really just have an experience of watching the film. But it is made for you guys and the new generation that don't know anything about it. There's something that happened on the night of the premiere, which was a big deal for me because it showed me that probably I succeed on the level that I wanted to succeed, which was my kid was there with a friend and his friend was almost 12, 11 something, almost 12, and he was there. I guess they're not supposed to be, but fuck it. And when the movie ends, he turns to my kid and with his face and he goes like, "That's probably the best movie I ever saw in my life," right? Because most of us saw the originals when we were that age, and you're such in that moment in your life where when you're still introduced to this such an adult world and it's all that shit that you know from the Star Wars movies, but suddenly with a spin of darkness and scare and adulthood in a way of all the mysteries that your parents hide from you, exposed in the film, so obscene as well in many levels, and fuck, that kid was blown away, and I'm sure that hopefully that's going to be doing with a generation of kids that are going to go in 20 years they're going to love the movie and remember that experience they had with the film and that I think in a way, I see it as more fair than doing it just for our generation. Just to do it for us again. We're too old. It's really hard for us to any movie to see it and go like, "That's the best movie I've ever seen." You never. It's very rare that you ever have that reaction to anything these days. But those kids do, and not every movie does that to them. And so suddenly to be able to get in there to a generation that really responded to it is very special. The same thing that happened in China, where there was not a fandom of Alien, and I don't know if you heard, but it made more money in China than the United States. It's insane. There's all this phenomenon over there, and I did an hour of interviews with local press, and they were like this, it felt like kids waking up to this thing that I never saw before, and they were so fascinated with it, and it's all new. So obviously, if I tell them, did it bother you? You say, get away from her, you bitch. They're gonna go, what are you talking about? It's just, you're upset with all those callbacks. They don't. It's not a problem for them. So the masses, it's not a problem. But all goes back to that Metallica example I tell you. It's like you want it to be just for you. You want to be just for you. And when they change, it feels more accessible in some level, and it's spread to people that never care about it. It's this complex jealousy that it triggers, I think, of like, fuck, what is this? But that's why I want to hear from you guys what the things you didn't like that much, but I guess you're being shy.
Well,
I think we've just seen it so many times now that we've all. I gotta say, for me, Fede, just super brief. The third time I saw it was the time I decided I loved it, and it was because my kids were there, and we stayed up so late that night, fucking playing like we were on the ship or like we were in the Corblon, and I was like, this is it. Like this happened to me as an adult now. My kids fell in love with this
How
thing
old
that
are
I'm
they?
obsessed with. 11 and 7.
Yeah, there you
And
go. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. And the
Great
7-year-old,
age.
I took him out for the offspring. My 11-year-old, I told him something was coming, and he was like, "Dad, I'm gonna stay." And he
Yeah.
was like so scared and excited, and we just stayed up super late that night. And I was like, "Thank you, Fede, for all this." And
There you go.
I know
And
we have to wrap, but
no
thank you
worries.
so
But
much.
that is the point. That is
Mission accomplished.
really what I was trying to accomplish. To show, to prove to a new generation, why is it so cool? Why is it so scary? Why is it so attractive and terrifying at the same time? And it's really hard to do for and I think you have to kind of start from the beginning a little bit to be able to do that. You have to start from the beginning, and that means you got to repeat things that you guys have seen before. Actually, I tell you, one of the scenes I dislike the most is when Rook has to dump all that fucking exposition, and there's just no fucking way around it, right? Like you could not do it, and you could do it in a cryptic way. And believe me, most of the new audience is gonna go, it's gonna get lost. It's gonna go, what are they alluding to? They're just gonna get completely lost. For us that we know, we go like, yeah, I know you don't have to tell me anything. As soon as he says another ship, towing ship, encountered her, and then and I don't know what, piece of whatever, like the briefest, more elevated version of that. Sure, for us it will work. It will make all that new generation to go, I don't know what they're talking about. How the fuck that alien? Where that thing came from? Where they didn't know it was. It might be, and you never know until you try it. But it's one of the things that is the curse that comes with this movie is that you have to address at some point. You cannot make it a pure, simple storytelling, machine. You cannot do the perfect simple story like you will do it in a movie like Don't Breathe, where you can really create the machine the way you want it. There's so much that happened before that needs to be acknowledged somehow, and you need to bring it in the scene. That's why that scene, I'm like, okay, let's get over this, because all I want is to move on to the second half of the film, and not having to deal with that. But there was no way, I felt that there was no way. So there's many of the things that maybe the fans don't like, that I don't like either. But it's just like, you got to do it. You got to do it for the new generation. You got to do it for them. You got to do that to keep them engaged and keep them in the loop. But I didn't want to have people that were younger. What if they think there's people in their 20s, early 20s? I haven't seen any of them. They just don't know. I told the story before, like, actors I met. They said like, yeah, just the first ones, the two original ones, Prometheus and Covenant. And as people like that, you cannot blame them. It's not their fault, It's just like whatever. They didn't go there for a reason. They didn't have anybody in their families that showed them or educate them on those films. They don't know. So you don't want that audience to be like, I don't know why those like 40-year-old guys in the back seem to not happily, and I'm completely confused about what's supposed to be happening here. Which is, it is the problem of the legacy sequels that when I don't know. Terminator, the last one, that was an issue. Like I had a good time watching that movie, but I could feel in the room how everybody was so confused about why am I supposed to be excited about this lady coming out of a truck with a bazooka and like who the fuck is he? And then it's not particularly excited for them. It's like, yeah, it's just and then it goes to this old guy that's supposed to be a machine. Oh, it's this guy living in a farm. Like it's just it's only excited in some level for us. Oh, look at that, Sarah Connor is back. But for the new audience, it's just not a good idea. They just don't get it. That's why then they died. I don't know what they're going to do now with it, but it's definitely not continuing that because it's just too late. Those stories went on forever. And so I that's what I want to make sure didn't happen here, and I think the success of it shows that it didn't, and the fact that it was well received show it that it didn't, and that's for me the big accomplishment to be able to inject life back into it, which was the one what all of us want to make sure it continues and it doesn't just die there or just stay dead like it was a little bit like before we did it, but which for me it never died. I'm sure you guys are the same thing. I remember when I got the job and I was so excited about it. I told a filmmaker friend that remain unnamed, but when I told him the news, he wasn't that excited. He was like, and he kind of fronted me. I was like, "Isn't that like a dead franchise?" And I was like, "Is it? I don't think so." For me, it wasn't. And then now the movie comes out, everybody's like, "Oh, brought back life into this thing." I was like, "Hey, maybe he was right. It was dead." But for me, it never went anywhere because I love it so much that it's just something that I constantly watch and rewatch and watch this and that. And even fucking Covenant, if he's there, well, I'll watch Covenant. Like, and so I never see it as like this thing that people saw as gone, right? So right now I'm like, that's what he meant by it was dead because it probably was, but now he's not, and I think that's a big accomplishment of the film. I think that now the studio really believes in it and wants more movies and for us I love it. That's the best part.
You just mentioned, so do you think we're getting more movies?
I think the studio definitely wants more. And for me, it's always about finding the right story. That's all it is. I would never do it because we can. That's the mistake a lot of times. Oh, we can do it, then let's just do it. That'll be a mistake. So I think it will be about Roto, my co-writer, and I
Of course.
to think, okay, it's this. Where does the story goes? And we have some ideas of where the story goes. When you write those endings, you cannot write those endings thinking, well, then who knows? You have to have an idea of like probably what's ahead of those characters. And but we have to figure out the story. And then if we reach a place that go like, this is a story worth telling, that's where we make it. I mean, I would love to go back in there and do another one. It's been such a privilege and a great experience, and the cast, everybody was fantastic. Everybody's super behind the movie. They sometimes you have people that might be working on the film, but it's just a film. Everybody here was like, we're making an alien movie and it got to be amazing. It had the best it can be, and really they put so much passion and love and energy on every detail of it. Everybody that worked on it, which is rare. It doesn't happen every time. I've been in experiences where people are like, this is a movie, just go to work, and they don't know what it is, and they want to go home early, and this was not that. So we'd love to work with all those people again for sure.
Super briefly, I wanted to ask you, I know you have a hat from me, and I couldn't help but notice in that photo on set that it's weathered. So I was wondering,
because
is it in the film?
I gave it to the weather department. There's
okay.
We have a department in the costume designer that is the just weather down things, right? You buy a new hat, you give it to them, and they'll put all these chemicals to make it look like it's 20 years old, and so that's what I did with that hat. Yeah. Sorry.
So it's not in the film somewhere. I was looking for it like in the background.
No, it could have been. It will be a Corbella. It will be a Stromo hat there. That will be. I mean, it could have been like someone.
We have that.
Just have to stand there. There you go.
And Perry also.
I love that one. Love that
Well,
one.
Fede, thank you so much. A couple quick shout outs. Thank you so much to Amy in particular, your associate producer. She was instrumental in getting you back on the show. She's been amazing to work with. Please thank her
She's
for us.
amazing.
The best. Yeah.
Jamie, of course, our founder, couldn't be here. He's traveling through Europe, and there were too many time zones. We couldn't make it work, but he
He
really
was
wanted to be
nervous. I
here.
was going to confront him. I was going to go like,
Yeah.
He was like, "I can't do it." No, he
I
wasn't.
can't do it.
So hopefully
Next
we'll
time.
do
Next
this again. Yeah. And of course, Xander, Andy, the rest of our team, they just send their regards and are so grateful for all this time that you've given us and for this movie. And thank you from all of us here today for the nightmares you're giving us and for the experience of having a new Alien film come out and breathe life into this franchise, like you said, and giving us probably the most exciting summer we've had as a fandom ever.
Amazing.
So thank you
awesome.
so much
Yeah.
from all of us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. This
Thank you
is
so
a
much.
pleasure. Can we do it again?
Oh,
Thank you, guys.
Please.
yes.
For anything.
Yeah.
Coffee, whenever
Yeah.
you're in New York, coffee on me.
Will do. Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank you,
great
Fede.
day.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Well done,
Thanks.
too.